From courtside of the virtual hardwood, it's the NLSC Podcast, a weekly show for basketball gamers and hardcore hoopheads. Andrew with you once again, joined as always by my co-host Derek, aka D for 3. Derek, we are both huge basketball fans, and there are many reasons for that, particularly players who captured our imaginations. We're going to be talking about the players who made us fall in love with the game, so please, tip us off.
So today we discuss, if you wanted to make someone fall in love with basketball, what past and present basketball player would you introduce to them first? So Andrew, my choice for player from the past is undoubtedly Michael Jordan. However, I'm sure this is your choice as well. You are a huge Jordan fan. So I will also be making an argument a little later in the show for Larry Bird. But why don't you tell our audience why you would choose Michael Jordan to introduce somebody to the sport?
I mean, we're talking about the supreme fusion of skill and flashy play. Just so many highlights, just so much skill on display, even without the flashy dunks. Just what he's achieving on the court just shows how beautiful basketball can be. That grace, that power, that creativity, just amazing. You know, I can watch Michael Jordan highlights over and over again. Long reels, over and over again, never gets old. I do think he is the greatest player of all time. He is at least one of the most entertaining players of all time. There have certainly been many flashy players, and we've talked before about whether he is the best in-game dunker. There is arguments for Vince Carter, for Dominic Wilkins. You know, I totally understand that, and I think they're fantastic players and very entertaining players to watch as well. But for me, Michael Jordan is the player that got me into basketball, just enthralled watching his highlights. And not just highlights, of course, watching him play. A few weeks back, I was watching a game from the 1998 season, the game against the Dallas Mavericks, where Bubba Wells fouled out very quickly against Dennis Rodman doing the hacker worm, and watching MJ turn it on in the second half. For the first half, he was kind of going through the motions. You know, it's the lowly Dallas Mavericks. Even without Scottie Pippen, the Bulls were doing okay at the start of the 98 season. Again, it's the Mavericks. They can probably take care of business. But the Mavs are still sticking around through most of the game. MJ's kind of going through the motions. But then he just locks in that second half. He's just making jumpers. They're barely touching the rim as they go through. Just whatever he wants against the defense. Just an incredible display of taking over a game. Yeah, if you want to see basketball played at the highest level, the most skillful player, the most spectacular player, it has to be MJ.
Yeah, so as it relates to Jordan, I've never seen a player look so impressive, both from an athletic and skill standpoint. His highlights are the most jaw-dropping, whether it's dunking on guys like Mark Eaton, Dikembe Mutombo, and Alonzo Mourning, or taking guys like Anthony Mason in the post, beating everybody from the perimeter with his quick first step, obliterating the opposition from the mid-range, aerial assaults at the rim that defy gravity, or unleashing from three in the playoffs when it really counted. I've never seen a player look so good. And like you stated, his highlights never get old. I could watch them on repeat all day long. Also, though, it's the fact that he provided that same level of dominance on the defensive end. I could show this person ridiculous blocks and steals. If you look at his stats, he had 131 blocks one season and 125 another season. Those are big man numbers, right? Jordan was a shooting guard. As a competitor, always trying to guard the best player on the opposing team. That's another big piece of this. It will also allow me to show them the ultimate competitor, the game face, showing up in big games, always wanting to take the shot. And obviously the stats, accolades, and overall accomplishments speak for themselves. Yeah, MJ is definitely my number one choice as far as a player that I would want to show somebody who's trying to get into basketball. Or, if it was my kid and I was trying to get my kid into basketball, I'd be pulling up those Jordan games, those Jordan highlights, pulling up Basketball Reference as well and showing them the stats and the accolades, etc. However, we both chose Jordan, so I have an alternate. I want to make an argument for Larry Bird. Seeing someone dominate the game while not looking like a super athlete could be incredibly inspiring to someone just learning about the sport. The fact that he could drop a 30-point triple-double on any given night, regardless of who he was playing, was incredibly impressive. I could show games where Bird trash-talked and backed it up. I could show incredible passing and rebounding prowess for a man who was 6'9". I could show him dueling with superior athletes but winning the battle. I can show countless games where he would hit an array of shots from both outside and inside the three-point line that relied mostly on skill, touch, and using a mental advantage. And again, just like Jordan, his stats, his accolades, his overall accomplishments, 3 straight MVPs, 3 NBA championships, all of that speaks for itself. So, yeah, Bird, another great choice to show somebody just trying to get into the game.
Our goal this week was to just pick the one player. Quite often we'll do a lineup, a lot of honourable mentions. We were challenging ourselves to just name one player this week. If I was going to name multiple players, I was going to say Larry Bird as well. I was going to say Magic Johnson. What a trio to show anybody, right? MJ, Bird, and Magic. You've got everything. The flashy passes, the high-flying dunks, the incredible shots, clutch buckets, defense, just all kinds of highlights. And yeah, Larry Bird also up there as a competitor, right there with MJ. And the other thing about MJ, about Bird, about Magic as well, and all the great players, but certainly them, because they are my top 3 all time, is they made some really incredible plays look incredibly easy. Whether it was no-look passes, soaring dunks above the defense, shots with the defense draped all over them to win the game. Larry Bird telling people, I'm going to get the ball here, I'm going to shoot it, and I'm going to win the game, and then doing it. MJ hitting his clutch shots, and of course Magic had some game winners as well. The fact that they're doing all this incredible stuff that is not easy at all, even for many NBA players, for many great players over the years, and they're just making it look so simple. It's incredible. That's why they definitely have to top my list.
You watch somebody like Magic Johnson at 6'9", flying up and down the court, throwing no-look passes, looking like he has eyes in the back of his head. And you forget watching that footage, Andrew, that he is 6'9", right? That is a big man. Have you ever seen a 6'9" human being in real life? I've had a couple guys, and actually I'm in a men's league right now, and I have a guy on my team that is 6'9". He's a center. He actually is a former college basketball player. 6'9" is ridiculous.
Yeah.
As it relates to height, in comparison to the average man. And, most guys who are 6'6" and above are kind of slow. They're kind of methodical. And I'm talking about like the average person. They're not as coordinated, etc. But look what Magic was able to do. That is just absolutely incredible. And like you stated, also making it look so easy. I think Magic's also a good choice here because of the fun factor. He made basketball look incredibly fun. Not just, watching him the way he played, but the way he made everybody else have fun around him. Right? Getting everybody involved, looking one way, passing it to another, to a teammate coming down the court who throws it down and, points at Magic and is like, thank you for that great pass, right? Like he made basketball fun for everybody around him. And I think that could be incredibly inspiring for somebody just getting into the game. I think Bird's game overall is a little bit more aesthetically pleasing than Magic's as it relates to, his shooting, his post game, like his fadeaways and just the way he would score the basketball. I think that's a little bit more pleasing to the eye, especially for somebody, just getting into basketball. But yeah, Magic's game is still super inspiring.
Oh, I agree. Just effortless. And that is very fun to watch. And it does promote a selflessness as well. That's the great thing about Magic's game, and that court vision and that team spirit. Absolutely. And that is important, looking effortless, because again, these are very hard plays that they're making against some great defenders, against a lot of physicality, and also the moves that they're trying to do. MJ in midair, Larry Bird shooting in the face of the defense. Not easy, but they are just making it look so easy. You just can't help but marvel at those highlight reels.
And it's also worth noting that you have players like you stated, like Vince Carter, right? Vince Carter could be shown to somebody just getting into basketball and their jaw would drop, right? His dunk on Alonzo Mourning, where he uses his body against Mourning and just flushes it on him. And apparently that made Alonzo Mourning not talk to Vince Carter for years following that play. But, it's also the rest of his game, right? His handle is aesthetically pleasing. He has a nice looking shot. His highlights are incredible. A guy like Dominique Wilkins, if I showed somebody just getting into the sport, the array of poster dunks that Neek would throw down, how hard he threw it down, the way he approached the game, I think that would be also inspiring. So there are a lot of players from the past, even if you go all the way back to Bill Russell's day and you look at Bill Russell's game, and there's not a lot of footage out there, so it'd be hard to show. But, the fact that he was such a winner and, grabbing rebounds and outletting it immediately,
running
and being the ultimate team player, the ultimate pro. Right. And I think that could be inspiring. So there's a lot of great players you could show somebody just trying to get into the game. But for me, for a past player, if I had to choose one, it's got to be MJ.
Very difficult to go past MJ for our generation, absolutely. And that's not to say that we don't admire the players that came before. Dr. J, I know you are a big Dr. J fan, rightfully so. I enjoy him as well. Obviously, inspiring MJ, David Thompson. Like you say, Bill Russell doesn't have the flashiness, the flair, but still impressive, the way he would block shots, the way he'd control those blocked shots, the way he'd grab the rebound, run the floor. We talk about centers running the break these days. That was happening in the 60s and indeed the 50s when Bill Russell started. So a lot of stuff is older than people think. We've said that before. The style isn't always there because you couldn't dribble like you can in later decades. You had to have your hand on top of the ball, otherwise it was a carry. And that does bring me to another example. I know we weren't going to go into a whole list of them, but we do love basketball so much, so it's hard not to talk about all of the plays we love. But Allen Iverson, another favourite of yours, very exciting to watch. Revolutionised the game in the late 90s, early 2000s. Kind of did make the dribbling rules change, started to allow a bit more leeway with where they were placing the hand on the ball. But yeah, Allen Iverson, another exciting player that you could show people today and get them into the game.
Yeah, what about Dirk, right? Dirk, KG. Yeah, there's so many. I also want to point out that, Kobe could also be inspiring to somebody just trying to get into the game. However, in comparison to Jordan, I could never put Kobe over him as my first choice because Jordan was a far superior athlete. I think he was a lot smoother.
I was going to say smoother.
Kobe. I think his game was a lot smoother. Yeah. And I don't think that Kobe was even close to as good of a defender as peak MJ as well. I think that Kobe was incredible. Right. And he made so many miraculous shots, big shots. He was a winner, obviously. And the skill set that he, had was incredible. But I could never put him over MJ for those reasons.
Before we go on, a reminder that the NLSC podcast comes out every week on the NLSC, nba-live.com, as well as our YouTube channel. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast apps. If you're listening on any of those apps, we'd greatly appreciate a review. To keep up with the show and everything we're doing with basketball gaming in general, connect with us on social media. On Twitter and Facebook, we are the NLSC. We also have an Instagram, NLSC Basketball, and on YouTube, we're youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. Once again, visit us at nba-live.com, where in addition to the podcast, you'll also find all of our original content, as well as our forum and modding community.
But Andrew, let's talk about the current NBA. So the question was also, if there was, you were trying to get somebody into basketball, what current player would you show them? So I'm going to kick this one off. So for today's player, I think I would show them Steph Curry. In my opinion, he has been the best ball handler and three-point shooter over the last 15 years. Not only that, he has been the scariest opponent, with defenses doing everything they can, including grabbing and holding to gain an advantage on him, or at the very least, slow him down. It's not only his game, it's also the joy he shows playing it. Every time I watch Curry, he looks incredibly focused, but also looks like he is having the time of his life. He is a fun player to watch, and he's super easy to cheer for. I think that would go a long way with someone who is trying to get into the sport. He's also easier to connect with for the average fan due to being 6'3". While still taller than the average man, he is smaller than a lot of the legends from the past. And again, his accolades and overall accomplishments speak for themselves. But Curry, just the big plays, the big game, his shooting, his ball handling. Like I said, I think he's the best ball handler that I have seen over the last 15 years in the NBA as an overall ball handler. When you combine the ability to bring up the ball, the overall ability to evade defenders, the different moves he has in his dribbling arsenal, the way he gets around people in the half court, just what a scary player, right? And his highlights look absolutely incredible, whether it's hitting, like a 35-footer or 40-footer to beat the Thunder, just making it look absolutely effortless, or getting like Steven Adams in these ISOs where he looks like he has no room to shoot, and he shoots a moon ball over him and it explodes the net. I've just seen so many great plays from him, and I think that his game and his personality would be incredibly inspiring for somebody just getting into the game.
It comes back to what we said about the great players of the past, that they make it look so easy. You don't expect Steph Curry to miss. That is the entertaining thing about him. And you could say the same thing for MJ and Kobe and so many other great scorers throughout history. And it's funny because you look at the box score after the game and you realize, oh, they missed more than I realized. Because while you're watching the game, it just seems like they're hitting absolutely everything. And of course, they do have nights where they are hitting a really high percentage. That does happen from time to time. But generally speaking, they are shooting around 50%. So around half their shots are missing. But it seems like they are hitting everything. And with Steph Curry, you're surprised when a shot from 35 feet over a defender misses. You just expect him to splash everything. Has that beautiful shot, that beautiful arc, makes the net explode. Yeah. And to your point, kind of attainable. That is selling his skill set short, but you feel like you can imitate Steph Curry on the court a little bit easier than, say, Michael Jordan or Dominic Wilkins or Vince Carter or anyone else who can really fly through the air, do all kinds of things with the ball before throwing it down. Obviously, shooting like Steph Curry is not easy, but you can kind of be Steph Curry when you're shooting around.
And not everybody can dunk, but everybody can technically shoot a basketball, right? Like, you can get a shot up, but if you try to dunk, you're probably going to fall on your face. So I definitely agree with that. I think that I was super impressed with the community's responses to this question as it relates to current players specifically, because there's a lot of different choices, and we're going to get into that. But what was your choice for current player to show somebody just getting into the game?
Well, this might not be a surprise because I have mentioned him before, but Wembanyama, Wemby. I think he is a spectacular player, multi-talented, a very interesting player to be almost 7.5 feet tall, doing the things that he is, those acrobatic layups, the dunks obviously, just catching lobs, dunking all over Draymond Green the other day, swatting shots, gets steals as well, fantastic defender, developing this post-game, working with Akeem in the off-season, how scary he can be, just everything he can do on the court, just a very interesting sight at his size, and also the youth, because if you're getting into basketball today, I mean, it's important to show people who the veterans of the game are and enjoy them while we have them. Obviously, I got into basketball in the mid-90s when a lot of the players from the 80s and early 90s were veterans, and some of them were getting towards the end of their careers. And I enjoyed them absolutely fine to become fans of them. But because he is so young, so many years ahead of him, so it would seem, hopefully he stays healthy, hopefully he does have a long and successful career, he's someone that you can get on the bandwagon now and follow his career and enjoy the success that hopefully will come.
Yeah, he also has that superhuman element that I've talked about so many times that, again, is jaw-dropping, right?
Yeah.
And it can really make the average fan think that the NBA is just this otherworldly league, right? That the players that are in it are, from out of this world. And that's why I think that choice makes perfect sense. And I agree with you. Steph Curry is, he only has a couple of years left probably in the league. He's still performing at an incredibly high level. If I wanted to show them, a younger player, I'd probably show them Wemby. I also like the way Wemby carries himself, right, off the court. I like the way he conducts himself in interviews. He seems like a super likable guy. I also like the way he approaches the game. I like the fact that he didn't back down from Draymond Green and then dunked it on him, right? Draymond Green was talking a whole bunch of crap, and Wemby was like, I'm going to throw it down in your face, and then I'm going to tell you about it afterwards. I didn't know he had that in him, to be completely honest with you.
That was good.
So that was really nice to see. Another guy that gets mentioned, too, as a young player, while I don't like him off the court, and I'm really not a fan of him in interviews either. As far as his game goes, a guy like Anthony Edwards would be a good player to show somebody just getting into the game, because I do think that he often has an all-around attack. He has some incredible poster dunks, which are, again, jaw-dropping and look superhuman. He has that superhuman element in that regard. And, just the way he moves on the court, I think he's overall a fun player to watch. But yeah, young player might be Wemby.
And not to undermine the whole point of naming just one player to get somebody into basketball these days, because that is a good starting point, obviously. But I'd also encourage a young fan looking to get into basketball to appreciate all of the stars in the league, or try to. We mentioned all those stars of the past at the top of the show, because when we got into basketball, Derek, we had our favorites, the ones that stood out, the ones that inspired us the most, but we enjoyed that galaxy of stars. So I think that it's important that you can enjoy all of the stars of the league, that any given night you can turn on the game and enjoy seeing the best players in the league competing against one another. That you can enjoy the veterans while we still have them, show respect to the veterans while they're still around, give them their flowers, but at the same time, latch onto those rising stars and enjoy their rise through the ranks and them becoming the faces of the league and champions and eventually Hall of Famers as well. So I think it's important to be able to enjoy the entire league. We have our favorite players, we have our favorite teams. That's great. That allows you to be really invested in certain results throughout a very long season, obviously. But it is so much more fun when you can enjoy the entire league, at least to some extent.
Yeah, I think the difference is that you need something to latch on to, right,
oh, yes.
at the start. Something that inspires you, that makes you want to watch
a
more.
hook, yeah.
And for us, our local team growing up was the Boston Celtics, and I've stated it before, watching, D. Brown and Reggie Lewis and an older, obviously, Larry Bird and whatnot. It was my introduction to watching basketball, and those Celtics players, those athletes, the way they played and whatnot, inspired me to learn more about the NBA, right? It made me want to watch the other teams. It made me want to learn more about the other teams. It made me want to play more basketball video games. It made me want to pick up almanacs. It made me want to collect cards, all of that stuff, right? So there's always an entry, right? There's always a place where it starts. And I think that helps when you talk about, what team would you show somebody, or what player would you show them? So this was actually a community question, Andrew. So again, if you wanted to make someone fall in love with basketball, what past and present basketball player would you introduce to them? First, so Teddy Bear the Gamer states, past, Michael Jordan, good choice. Present, Anthony Edwards, and probably for a lot of the same reasons that I mentioned. T Gentry at Bucky_T states, past, Michael Jordan. Present, Zion Williamson, Andrew. Haven't seen someone like him since Barkley or Larry Johnson, who I'm a huge fan of. And yeah, I was hoping for more with Zion. Not only was I hoping for a healthier career, but I was hoping for some incredible play, incredible highlights, and incredible accomplishments. When he came into the league, he was saying all the right things. It was during media day, or it was just an interview, I can't remember exactly, but somebody asked him, what impressed him the most about Michael Jordan. And Zion Williamson said it was his defense. And that impressed me, right? He was talking about how Jordan was so good on defense and he dedicated himself on that end. So I was like, man, Zion can put the ball in the hole. He has incredible dunks, incredible moves around the rim. But we're going to see some incredible defensive stuff from him as well. And then he got into the league, and it never felt like he was going at 100% on both ends. I think you would agree. We've seen flashes of it. I've seen him be almost the most doubled player in the entire NBA when he's healthy and, going hard and whatnot. But we've never seen Zion 100% healthy and with 100% effort. And that's super disappointing to me because I absolutely love his game. I love how he can take it from the perimeter or take it down low, and he just looks absolutely unstoppable going to the rim. I think he's an incredible athlete. And, maybe he'll pull it together, but I'm starting to doubt it at this point because he's been in the league so many years now, and he just hasn't been able to put it together from an effort or health perspective.
Yeah, it hasn't been the run we envisioned for Zion Williamson. And the Barkley comparison, and it's not 1-to-1, obviously. We've talked about that before. Barkley, a much better rebounder.
Much more skilled player, really, from like a shooting perspective, too. I mean, he wasn't a consistent shooter, but
yeah.
Barkley, I've seen him score 40, 50 points, and a lot of his attack was like mid-range jumpers, couple threes thrown in there, long twos, all of that stuff, post fadeaways, and Zion can't do any of that. Like to me, Charles Barkley is a much more skilled and impressive player. But from the athlete perspective, I can see where some of those comparisons come in.
That is where most of the similarities lie. Of course, being that bigger player, an undersized power forward, but having the speed for the size he is at that power forward position, the ferocity of the dunks. I think it was the NBA Cobwebs account on Twitter that was posting some Charles Barkley highlights the other day, just watching Chuck go to the rim each and every time, just trying to throw it down each and every time. There's a little bit of that in Zion Williamson, or there is some similarities in the athleticism, in the ferocity of the dunks. But like you say, the overall skill set, the skill level isn't there. I think Charles Barkley is underrated, and that's always weird to say about a Hall of Famer, because people say, oh, he's in the Hall of Fame, he's acknowledged as a great player, how can he be underrated? But you also have a lot of people saying, well, he didn't win a ring, we can probably blame Shaq for the how many rings have you won, Chuck, whenever he disagrees with Chuck on Inside the NBA. But Charles Barkley was an incredible player, and no, Zion Williamson is not on the same level, but I do see the similarities as far as being that 6'6" beast who can just get into the lane and throw it down, at least when healthy. So I see what Bucky T is saying about being reminded of Charles Barkley with Zion Williamson. Larry Johnson, of course, another undersized power forward who could shoot better than Zion Williamson, could probably shoot a bit better than Charles Barkley from the outside, did become quite a proficient three-point shooter over the years, but early on in his career, before his back injuries really slowed him down, man, Grandmama was a fantastic athlete, a very entertaining dunker.
Barkley, from a rebounding perspective, had such a huge advantage over Zion. That shouldn't even be compared. Like Zion tries to get most of his rebounds by leaping, right? Barkley could get 20 rebounds with 14 of them boxing out. He was amazing at boxing out. Always had a butt on somebody. And then the other 6, he could be leaping over you. Right. Like he's just one of the best rebounders that I have ever seen. So as a player, Zion doesn't get close overall to Barkley, in my opinion. But if you did want to show somebody who's just getting into the game Zion Williamson highlights and how they have to double him constantly on the perimeter and in the post because, the perimeter doubles come because they didn't want him to get downhill, right? Because the minute that Zion gets a first step and he's going downhill, it's like a freight train. How are you going to stop that? I think he would be a good player to show. And, he did have some incredible blocks in college, but he's also had some good blocks in the NBA, obviously not to the degree of what he did in college, but, he has some flashy defensive plays at times. Dr. Easy Money at Mick Golf Wang H states past Larry Bird and present Jalen Brunson. And Jalen Brunson is mentioned a few times here. And I like that choice. And I think it goes back to the being able to relate to him, as an average person, as an average athlete, because Jalen Brunson's game is very low to the ground. He's methodical in his approach, the way he gets to his spots. You could, go out there and try to imitate Jalen Brunson and kind of feel good about yourself while you're doing it, right? Because he's not an above the rim guy. And I've always liked his game, similar to guys like, in the past, like Dennis Johnson and whatnot, that just knew how to get to their spots and played the right way. And that's inspiring basketball in itself. So, I like that choice.
Unfortunately, nobody's saying Rick Brunson as the player from the past that they would like to show to anybody to get them into basketball. Yeah, Jalen Brunson, one of the best signings that the Knicks have made in decades, really. And people were saying, oh, he's overpaid, what a foolish move by the Knicks, but it's really paid off. A couple of all-star appearances, averaging 28 points per game. He can shoot, he can handle the ball, he can run the team. Yeah, like you say, not the flashiest player, but plays the game the right way.
Strays at Strays_GSW states, past Steve Francis and current Jalen Brunson. Another vote for Jalen Brunson. And Steve Francis, great highlight tape, right? If you wanted to put on a 10-15 minute highlight reel of Steve Francis and be like, check this out. He's crossing people up and, dropping defenders, and famously he couldn't palm the ball, but had some incredible dunks in game and in the dunk contest, ball on a string, had a nice little pull-up game in the mid-range, acrobatic moves at the hoop. Yeah, Steve Francis had a lot of great highlights. So I think that that's a solid choice.
And again, you've got that modern dribbling style, like an Allen Iverson, where they have eased up on the carry rules and really let them bring in some of that street ball style that was coming into vogue in the late 90s, early 2000s. Francis was a very exciting player to watch.
Jay at Jaj World 3 states past Penny for his Magic days. And Penny Hardaway, for a lot of the same reasons as Magic Johnson, would be great to show to somebody who's just trying to get into the game. That big size, for a point guard, 6'7", how he pushed the ball, the no-look passes, the lobs to Shaq, ball on a string again, just an incredible player. And then this one's interesting. So he said it's kind of past Paul George OKC days. I think a lot of people would choose maybe his Pacers days, when he was peak athletic Paul George, and that was combined with his skill. But OKC Paul George, I do want to point out that is one of the best video game teams of all time. Paul George, Russell Westbrook, and Carmelo Anthony, all on the same team. My brother once used them for a season against me, and we would just laugh at how good they were in video games, because you got your outside shooting, you got your slashing, you got your post-ups with Melo. All three of them can do it all in the video games, and it's hilarious how good they are. He also states for present, Jokic and Wemby. And Jokic is interesting because kind of with the Larry Bird element, where he is not one of the best athletes on the floor. In fact, a lot of times he doesn't look like a great athlete at all, as it relates to running and jumping and whatnot. But he dominates the game with pure skill and mentally outdoing his opponents. So that Jokic pick, he could be inspiring to a lot of people as well.
Well, let's start out with Penny. I'm sure that you and our listeners, as soon as you said Penny, thought about that incredible spinning step back. What a move. What a fantastic player. What a shame that microfracture surgery robbed us of prime Penny. We talk about Grant Hill.
Chris Webber, too. Webber, too, Andrew. I was just watching a game yesterday with my brother from the 04-05 season, and it was after the trade, and Chris Webber's with the Sixers. And it was after he had that microfracture surgery to repair a lateral torn meniscus. My God, had he lost it, Andrew. I don't care that he put up 20 points and 9 rebounds a game in 05-06 on that team that didn't make the playoffs for the Sixers. If you watch Weber try to move laterally and explode and whatnot, he is a shell of himself from a couple seasons before. That microfracture surgery, which isn't really practiced anymore as a result, did ruin a few legends' careers.
Yeah, I was going to say, the numbers are there for C-Web, those 2 years in Philadelphia, or that year and a half in Philadelphia, but yeah, just not the same player after that surgery, after those injuries, unfortunately. Grant Hill did have a bit of a resurgence in 2005 with the Suns. He was that solid player. We got, 18, 19 seasons out of him at the end of the day. We thought he was going to retire much earlier, but he did actually have that solid career and that long career. Wasn't a star for as long as we hoped he would be, and surely would have been if not for those injuries. But yeah, we at least got that longer career. Penny out of the league far too soon, out of his prime far too soon, but a spectacular player, very talented across the board. They called him the next Magic Johnson, and there was certainly a reason for that. But of course, on top of the flashy passes and ball handling, he could also get up and throw it down as well. I would have to agree that Paul George, his most spectacular days would be the Pacers days. I think about that 360 windmill, incredible dunk, one of my favorite dunks of all time, I would say, but certainly of the 2010s. But that is an interesting pick, the OKC days. Like you say, the quintessential video game team with Russell Westbrook and Carmelo Anthony. Yeah, didn't really go anywhere in real life, but that is the beauty of those video game teams, that on the virtual hardwood, they are more fun, they can be more successful. And yeah, once again, Wemby, that's my pick. But Jokic, once again, tremendous player, great attitude, great leadership, and I think that's something to admire, and that does make it easy to cheer for players.
Sir Jam at Sir Jam 34 states past Michael Jordan, present Wemby. So he has your choices there, Andrew. Moving over to Discord, KidCash202, who actually messaged me and asked if we could talk about this topic. So thank you for coming up with this week's NLSC podcast topic and community question. KidCash202 states Magic Johnson, hands down. The amount of fun and joy he played with would make anyone a fan. If I had a child that I wanted to be more of an aggressive ball player, I would suggest they'd watch Russell Westbrook or Kenyon Martin. The way that those dudes attacked the rim was a sight to see. So first off, Magic Johnson, definitely agree. Like I stated earlier, he looked like he was having so much fun out there. And his game made everybody better around him. I think that he just has incredible highlights, and he's super impressive. He mentions if he wanted a more aggressive ball player to show somebody just getting into the sport. Russell Westbrook is a phenomenal choice. And it's the same reason why he was my brother's favorite player for so many years. The determination, the scowl, the way he approached the game, the way he tried to attack everybody, that quick jump. He'd be going, it looked like he'd be going at half speed and just explode off of his feet and throw it down on somebody. I think that his game is really fun to watch. And I think his personality, you could gravitate to that, like his competitive nature, the way he would get the fans into it, the way he would get pumped up and get his teammates pumped up. I think Russell Westbrook is a great choice.
Back in the starting lineup for the Sacramento Kings as of late. Yeah, another very exciting player. I wish we had more battles between a prime Derrick Rose and a prime Russell Westbrook. Just two athletic guards, explosive leaping ability, throw it down with force. Yeah, obviously that was very disappointing how things turned out with Derrick Rose. Actually, as we're recording this, it's 12 years since the second major knee injury, and that was just devastating when that happened. A whole season he was out. There was all that talk that he was coming back, and I think that was a bit unfortunate, a bit unfair. There was a lack of communication, and people ended up blaming him for not coming back. Probably should have been made clearer that he was going to miss the season, that was the precautionary measure, but then came back and 10 games into the 2014 season, gets injured again, and never quite the same player again, unfortunately. But yeah, Derrick Rose was a very exciting player too. My favorite player, well, since Ben Gordon. But yeah, when Ben Gordon moved on to the Pistons, that was unfortunate to see. I wish we had more years of Rose and Gordon together. Having his three-point shooting, Gordon's three-point shooting that is, in the playoffs in 2011 would have been really nice. But But yeah, Derrick Rose became my favourite player, still one of my all-time favourite players. Wish it could have gone better, but for a while there, he would have been a player to show as well.
Juicy Shack Meat states past Michael Jordan and present Wemby. So again, agreeing with your two choices. So that's it for the responses to this week's community question. Thank you to everybody for weighing in. Yeah, I mean, like I stated, for me getting into basketball, it was watching the Celtics on our local broadcast, and that made me want to learn about the rest of the NBA. And for you, it was the great Michael Jordan, right? He inspired you. He made you want to learn more about the Chicago Bulls. He made you want to learn more about basketball. It made you start collecting all of that stuff. So, yeah, I think this is a really interesting topic.
Absolutely. And like I said, it is great when you can enjoy the entire league, when getting that starting point, that hook, just makes you want to learn everything you can about the game, learn about all the stars, watch any stars. Of course, you're going to gravitate towards your favorites and watch them as often as possible, but I do think it's important to be able to appreciate all the great players, past and present. I think the game is much more enjoyable. I think the discourse is a lot better when we take that approach. That is something I do miss about the discourse as a younger basketball fan back in the day. And it is interesting that Jordan and Wemby are those constant answers, but at the same time it makes sense. It goes back to what you were saying, Derek, that people gravitate and really admire and are inspired by those players that feel out of this world.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, every time I watch a Michael Jordan highlight reel, I'm like, how do you do that? Right? Like, I wish that I could recreate those aerial antics in my own basketball life. Like, it's superhuman to me. And a lot of things that you see Wemby do because of his height. Can you imagine seeing Wemby in person, by the way?
I'd like to. Hopefully, maybe one day.
Who is almost 7'5", or by all accounts is 7'5", doing the things that he can do from a ball handling perspective, from a shooting perspective, the way he can basically dunk without jumping, etc. Just ridiculous. The Florida Gators right now have the tallest player in basketball history. I believe his last name is Rue, and he's 7'9". I almost hope this guy just makes the NBA so I can see that out on the NBA floor. But he scored his first points of the season the other night on a free throw. But yeah, even a guy who's not super productive, even a guy who at the moment is getting mostly garbage minutes, a guy who can't move as well, just seeing somebody out there that tall is mind-blowing. 7'9", that's pushing 8 feet tall, Andrew. Yeah, ridiculous stuff.
And of course we are gamers, so anything that seems like it's only possible in a video game, yet we're seeing it in real life, whether it is this super tall player with maxed out abilities, like the kind of player that you'd make in Create a Player messing around, or just putting up incredible stats. Yeah, it just feeds your enthusiasm for the virtual hardwood and real basketball alike. But with that being said, that has brought us to the end of this week's show. Thank you for tuning in, and a reminder that you can catch us every week on the NLSC, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. We'd also like to remind you that both we and the NLSC are on social media, so Derek, go ahead and plug the handles.
You can reach me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at D43G and at D4384. I'm also on the NLSC, D43, and on YouTube, D43.
As for me, I'm Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on X and Blue Sky. The NLSC is on X, Facebook, and Blue Sky at the NLSC. We're also NLSC Basketball on Instagram and Threads. We're on YouTube at NBA Live Series Center. And of course, keep a look to the NLSC itself, nb-live.com, for all things basketball gaming. So, thank you once again for tuning in, and until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.